President Trump, he's back in the country after making a surprise Thanksgiving trip to our troops in Afghanistan, helping dish out food and thanking the brave men and women serving in America's longest war. The president also announcing peace talks are back on with the Taliban.
The Taliban wants to make a deal. We'll see if they want to make a deal. It's got to be a real deal, but we'll see. But they want to make a deal. And they only want to make a deal because you're doing a great job. That's the only reason they want to make a deal.
Dagan, let me go to you first, and I guess I'll give you opportunity to talk about either one, the incidents today overseas or, of course, the president's trip to Afghanistan.
I think the incidents overseas, knowing that at least the one in London is terror-related, it does kind of highlight the need to have a forward deployment of U.S. troops in these areas that have been breeding grounds, we know from 9/11, for terrorist activity to prevent these very attacks from happening again. We haven't had a successful attack by foreign terrorists on U.S. soil since 9/11. Terrorist attacks nonetheless, but these aren't forever wars, as President Trump likes to call them. We've had troops at least deployed in Europe since World War II, in Korea since the armistice back in 1953. I'll make that point. But I just want to say, yay, the president went to see the troops in Afghanistan for Thanksgiving. These are men and women serving this country who cannot be with their families. And I just think people automatically want to pivot to the political motives, pivot to this. President Trump's trying to wipe away things that have happened in recent weeks, even not much. He visited the troops. That's it. Good for him.
And Tom, he looked like he was having a great time. Of course, we know the troops enjoyed it, but he also looked like he was having fun.
Yeah, and fascinating. Did you take any secret trips when you were with George W. Bush?
Couple?
Yes. And do they tell you, because I read the fascinating piece by Kristen Fisher on FoxNews.com where she talks about the trip. She gave up her 3 phones. Yeah. They put her on the plane. She didn't know where she was going. They didn't tell her till they're halfway across the ocean. And so they're kept in the dark. But the whole trip was fascinating, obviously under the cloak of secrecy.
It is pretty interesting. I planned a couple of them. You know, usually as a press secretary, you have staff. But when you're planning a secret trip, you don't have any staff. It is all on you. And you have to go and meet with the press pool, the reporters that will be in one by one. I set up a sting operation at the Starbucks down the street, and they would come to me, and I would say, okay, these are the things you have to agree to. They were allowed to tell their spouse and their editor, and that was it. And then we would. But what I found is that the press never wanted to leak that because it was such an amazing opportunity, and they understood the gravity.
It sounds like this was more secret then.
It sounds like if they didn't even know where they were going, that would be certainly more secret. Yes.
My concern, and I completely agree with what Dagan said about having our troops on alert to keep them forward, not to retreat. And certainly, I'm concerned about our position in the Middle East, particularly in Syria. But I have a slightly different concern. I'm very worried about betting on the Taliban to restrain ISIS. Now, that's not a reason not to negotiate. I think we all have to stand behind our president as he goes forward. But let's be clear. These are not neutral or good actors. These are very, very dangerous people. We have an elected government in Afghanistan that's largely been kept out of the process. And I just want to be cautious as an American that we not, in this search of a deal, do something that could be calamitous.
The Taliban has never actually broken off with al-Qaeda.
Yeah, exactly.
And they never are. But I think when you look at American foreign policy and when it comes to finding allies, and we've always had some type of inroad within terrorist organizations. Like, even if you look at the Kurds, there's some factions of them that are affiliated with terrorist organizations, yet we still consider them as allies. So, again, I think it is problematic either way, and it's always been. But when I look at the president and what he decided to do, part of the reason why this worked is because the media was after the president. The fact that you see people talk about him golfing and all this stuff, and they played into this, those reports were almost shields for the president. That's a tough time after the president has gone on the offense.
It did seem like none of the reporters were aware.
They weren't aware.
Yeah, because usually, even during the Obama years, they would be like, okay, it's going to be the holidays. You know that he could possibly be going anywhere. Right. But they were smart, Dagan. The White House team was tweeting from the president's account while he was in the air.
They took the bait, too.
They absolutely did. At the end of the day, the president is with the troops serving up turkey and fixins, and everybody else with their complaints can stick it where the sun doesn't shine.
That's right. And the other thing that I maybe we could just talk just briefly about. Let me go to you, Tom. Is that the president, when he was doing the bilateral meeting in front of the press in Afghanistan, he talked about technology and how improvements in technology would allow us to be able to draw down a little bit more so that we can utilize the machines that we have.
And he wants to put the word out there that he is not abandoning troops. People accuse him of that in Syria. So he wants to say, we're going to do it wisely, we're going to draw down, we're going to use technology. So he wants to get that message out.
Yeah. All right. Well, what a wonderful A block, everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank you.